Right now on Morning News Now, war and peace talks. President Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin agreed to a limited ceasefire in Ukraine. But this morning, a new wave of airstrikes is calling the deal into question. Now pressure from Ukraine's president to be part of negotiations. We have team coverage. Also this morning, federal fallout. A judge taking on Elon Musk and Doge over the closure of a major U.S. agency. Plus, Chief Justice John Roberts pushing back against calls to impeach judges who rule against the Trump administration as controversy grows over the deportation of hundreds of migrants to an El Salvador prison.
So the only evidence the government has that your client is a gang member are his tattoos?
That's correct. He is, in fact, a law-abiding citizen with no criminal record.
We'll take you to Washington for the very latest. Plus, doctors and influencers beefing over a new wellness trend. Why experts say you should think twice before buying into beef tallow.
And splashdown, Crew 9 back on Earth.
Finally, 2 astronauts waking up Earthside after 9 months stranded in space. What's next for Butch and Sunny as they get reacquainted with life on Earth? And we will have to get reacquainted with not covering that story.
Exactly. We'll still give you a couple more days for sure, because I want to know what they ate for starters.
I know. How they feeling?
Good morning. Good to have you with us. I'm Joe Fryer.
And I'm Savannah Sellers. We're going to begin our show with the war between Russia and Ukraine and the ongoing efforts by President Trump to broker a ceasefire. On Tuesday, the president spoke on the phone with Russia's President Putin in an attempt to convince him to accept a 30-day truce. Now, Mr. Putin rejected the U.S. proposal for that full ceasefire, but he did agree to a 30-day pause in attacks on energy infrastructure. U.S. envoy Steve Witkoff later said officials from the U.S. and Russia would continue talks this weekend in Saudi Arabia. And Ukraine's President Zelensky says he's planning to speak with Mr. Trump today for a debrief of that call.
Despite the agreement, both Russia and Ukraine are accusing each other of targeting infrastructure this morning. Kyiv says that Russian drones damaged a hospital in eastern Ukraine. Moscow says Ukrainian drones hit an oil depot in southern Russia. Speaking to Fox News after those talks, President Trump said he wanted to end the war quickly.
Russia has the advantage, as you know. They have encircled about 2,500 soldiers. They're nicely encircled, and that's not good. And we want to get it over with. Look, we're doing this. There are no Americans involved. There could be if you end up in World War III over this, which is so ridiculous. But, you know, strange things happen. And I think we had a great call. It lasted almost 2 hours, talked about a lot of things, and toward getting it to peace.
In a few moments, we're going to hear from Ukrainian MP Kira Rudik. First, so let's get to NBC News senior White House correspondent Gabe Gutierrez and NBC News reporter Matt Bodner. Good morning to both of you. Gabe, let's start with you. What did we hear from the White House and President Trump after the call? How are they feeling about it?
Hi there, Joe. Good morning. Well, as you just played, the president saying that call lasted almost 2 hours. The president also posting on social media shortly after the call that he considered it good and productive. Now, the White House readout, as you mentioned, talked about that Russia had agreed to that 30-day pause in attacks on energy and infrastructure, as well as technical negotiations on the implementation of a maritime ceasefire in the Black Sea. The White House also saying that there will be ongoing discussions about a full ceasefire and permanent peace, and these negotiations will begin immediately in the Middle East. Now, Special Envoy Steve Witkoff is saying that the plan is to begin those negotiations in Saudi Arabia on Sunday. But, Joe, there are still a lot of questions about where we move from here. Both sides are accusing the other of violating that ceasefire on energy infrastructure overnight. And there are critics of the Trump administration who argue that he's being played by Vladimir Putin and that Putin is simply dragging out these negotiations and biding time while he continues his attacks on Ukraine. But the White House this morning is insisting that it was a good and productive call and that these talks would not be happening were it not for President Trump. Joe and Savannah.
Matt, let's bring you in here. So the Kremlin readout was a little different than the White House's, especially on this issue of aid to Ukraine. Tell us about that point of contention and what else Moscow had to say about the call.
Thanks, Savannah. Well, this is definitely turning a little bit into a tale of two statements. The Kremlin readout, it's longer. In certain ways, it's more detailed, at least in the sense that you can read it and you understand exactly what the Kremlin wants. very much what they've always wanted. That major point of contention, though, of course, they've rejected the calls for a total ceasefire, saying that they have a precondition, or at least several of them, and one of them being this idea of continued foreign military aid and intelligence sharing. They're saying, without mincing many words on this one, that they would need to see a complete stop to that, not just from the United States. They were specific about foreign, so this would appear to cover any potential EU assistance that might come were the United States to stop this. And it's an interesting point. I think we're hammering on it because it's right there in the Kremlin statement, but President Trump yesterday saying that this didn't come up on the phone call at all. It's also not the only discrepancy between the two readouts. And this is going to be a point, I think, that becomes very important over the next day, moving over the next few days. What specifically was agreed to in terms of the limited ceasefire? Russia said no total ceasefire, but agreed in concept to this idea of a pause on attacks on energy infrastructure. Yet if we look at the White House statement, if we look at Trump's post on Truth Social about the phone call, it appears that the White House thinks that there was an agreement for a ceasefire on energy and infrastructure. So that's obviously a much broader term. And it sort of begs the question is whether or not the two sides are on the same page at this point.
So, Gabe, you mentioned Steve Witkoff. He says talks between the U.S. and Russia will actually continue in Saudi Arabia this weekend. Beyond the issue of Ukraine, what are we seeing when it comes to normalizing ties between Moscow and Washington?
Yeah, you're right, Joe. Steve Witkoff saying that those negotiations will begin Sunday in Saudi Arabia. And the White House, according to its statement, said that this came up on the call, this broader idea of not just a potential ceasefire in Ukraine, but more stability in U.S. and Russia relations. The White House saying that it believes that those relations have a huge upside and that there could be a lot of economic deals and geopolitical stability when peace has been achieved. Now, Joe and Savannah, this comes, it makes sense after President Trump has long said that he prefers talking to our adversaries, and he believes that he can strike a deal with Vladimir Putin like no one else has. But again, critics of his administration wonder whether that's really possible. And indeed, Ukrainian President Zelensky has said that Putin cannot be trusted. Now, we are waiting today, as you mentioned, for that phone call between Ukrainian President Zelensky and President Trump. Today, we understand, to debrief on yesterday's call. Joe and Savannah.
Matt, what's been the reaction from Ukraine and President Zelensky, more that we know at this point at least?
Sure. Well, it's clear that Zelensky and the Ukrainian side was not at least immediately briefed. We understand that Zelensky will talk to President Trump today. But Zelensky spoke of this at length last night, and he essentially had more questions about this process, wanting to hear from the U.S. president specifically what was talked about. Essentially, what is America trying to sign Ukraine up to? Moving beyond Zelensky, though, there's sort of a broader concern within Ukraine, friends of Ukraine, outside of Ukraine, as to the implications of a limited ceasefire, even if it just applies to energy infrastructure. There is some concern that this sort of temporary truce actually favors Russia a bit more as things stand on the battlefield right now. Ukraine has been doing a lot of damage to Russian oil infrastructure, yet Russian drones continue to terrorize civilians in the cities every day.
All right, Gabe and Matt, thank you both. Appreciate it.
Well, for more on this, let's bring in Kira Rudik. She's a member of Ukrainian parliament. We've spoken with her several times throughout this conflict. She joins us from Ukraine's capital city, Kyiv. Kira, good morning. Thanks again for joining us. So following President Trump's call with Putin, I want to read something that you posted on X. You said, "We can only trust one's actions, not words. I wonder, an attack on a Kyiv school today in the morning, was it a critical infrastructure or not?" Tell us more about your initial reaction to what we're hearing from this call from both sides.
Hello, Savannah. Hello, John. Thank you so much for having me. Well, Savannah, you know, it was actually surreal yesterday because we have learned about how the call went yesterday in the evening, right at the same time when there was a drone attack on Kyiv. And I was literally giving the interviews and asking the questions while the air defense systems were taking down these drones, like really nearby. And I can assure you, I live nowhere near critical or any other infrastructure. So it was just another attack. I believe around 70 drones were attacking Ukraine this night. So for us, it was not new, right? We have been through these attempts of having so-called ceasefire with Russia since 2014. And we know for a fact that this is something that Russia never keeps, and that these attacks continue and just more people are being killed. This is what I believe President Zelensky was trying to deliver as a message to President Trump in the Oval Office. But right now, we see exactly what we have been telling the world. No matter what you agree with Russia with, you need to be very sure. How are you going to enforce this? And what would happen if they wouldn't do what they say they will? And this is exactly what's happening right now.
Kira, we've seen that a major focus of the Trump administration's push to end the war has been on what Ukraine should compromise, not Russia, even though Russia invaded Ukraine. What is it you want to see for Ukraine in these ceasefire negotiations?
The first and foremost, and the most important, and the baseline for any kind of negotiation is the security guarantees. This is something that we haven't heard from anyone just yet. We have heard what Ukraine needs to compromise on. We have heard their wishes for the peace, but not the main and the most important thing. How do we make sure that Russia would not attack us again? And if they attack, what would happen next? Because all the other discussions, all the other negotiations, they are really secondary to this critical point. And as of right now, we have seen how the new administration was able to put pressure on Ukraine, but we haven't seen how and what kind of pressure can be put on Russia to actually get to the table of negotiations, and what's the most important, to deliver on what they would be promised. And what would happen if at some point, like today, Putin is saying that he gave an order to stop the attacks and these attacks didn't stop? Like, what is the next step? Because right now, U.S. administration is not looking powerful and strong. They look like just another attempt to deal with Putin, and Putin was just simply laughing at that.
Kira, quickly, we know that there's plans for Zelensky and Trump to speak today. What do you make of how Zelensky's approaching this at this point?
Well, it will be interesting to hear if really the idea of unarming Ukraine and stopping all the support was on the call, because this is what we heard from Kremlin and didn't hear from President Trump. For Ukraine, it is obviously cannot be acceptable, because we cannot remain unarmed against the enemy whose clear goal is to kill us.
All right, Kira Rudik, we appreciate your time once again. Thank you.
The future of the U.S. Agency for International Development, known as USAID, is once again up in the air. Yesterday, a federal judge ordered the Trump administration to restore aspects of the recently shuttered department.
Yeah, just last month, crews were seen removing the USAID sign from its headquarters in the nation's capital. Well, now a district judge in Maryland has ruled that the swift closure by Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency, quote, likely violated the Constitution in multiple ways. President Trump slammed the ruling on Fox News last night.
We have a judge from a very liberal state who ruled like that. So bad for our country.
So I guess they closed the department. They're going to have to reopen
the department. Well, we'll be appealing it, I guess. Not I guess. I guarantee you. We will be appealing it. We have rogue judges that are destroying our country.
To help us break down the ruling, we have NBC News legal affairs reporter Gary Grumbach and legal analyst Danny Savalos. Gary, good morning. That's a new title for you, so congratulations on that. We're happy to have you with us on this. First, tell us more about what this judge has ordered the government to do and also to stop doing.
Hey, good morning, Savannah. Yeah, that's right. So a federal judge ordered to basically restore the systems of USAID. That means emails. That means payment systems to make sure these employees and contractors can get paid. And it also means the security notifications for folks that are in foreign countries around the world. The judge also ordered Doge cannot order any buildings, whether it's the headquarters here in D.C. or any of their satellite offices around the country or world, closed. And they said none of this can be ordered by Doge itself. They have to have a USAID official with authorization to make these orders happen, to be able to make that happen. Now, this is a real a pattern that we've seen here of judges from around the country trying to reinstate the pieces of USAID that they can. This judge we saw with the systems and access. We saw another judge trying to bring back the payments for contractors around the country and the grants and funds around the world. And then we also saw the probationary workers of USAID also reinstated in the past few days. Guys.
So Danny, this appears to be the first time we're really seeing a judge specifically call out Elon Musk and his role at Doge. What's the judge saying about how this could violate the Constitution?
Well, more specifically and beyond Elon Musk, the judge goes into great detail about how USAID was originally formed by executive order. Now, during that time, for about 30 years, presumably, it could have been unexecutive ordered. But in 1998, Congress made it official by statute. And Congress generally creates and abolishes agencies, not the president. So the court concluded that irrespective of Elon Musk, and that was a major part of the discussion, but the idea that the executive branch can simply shutter an agency without congressional authority, that itself exceeds the power of the executive. It also went into great length discussing how Elon Musk, saying he's just an advisor but acting as more than an advisor, is not just being an advisor.
Gary, President Trump has said that the dismantling of these federal agencies ultimately is helping to get rid of waste and fraud, something he also highlighted last night on Fox. But for those that actually work with USAID, what are they saying about the impact of shutting it down rapidly?
Yeah, the phrase move fast and break things is a phrase that has been co-opted by Elon Musk for a lot of what's happening with Doge. And I think that describes aptly what's happening here. Workers at USAID have called this catastrophic, the impact that this has already had on the programs and grants and funds that are happening around the world. And it's two issues specific to the Trump administration that they find most important that are really being impacted here. The southern border is being impacted here because of the root causes of migration that some of the USAID programs were helping to stop from happening and to really mitigate there. Also in Israel and Gaza, they were part of the aid programs that were in Israel, that were in Gaza, that were helping people out. Two issues very important to the Trump administration that are no longer getting the support they necessarily need.
So, Danny, did the judge leave some room for the Trump administration to potentially shut down USAID down the road? I mean, is it clear how long this reinstatement might last?
Not only yes, but absolutely. And that's why I caution folks, before I've read the headlines today, beware of the headlines that say Trump suffers smackdown at the hands of judge, because that's not really what this is. If this is a victory, it's kind of a hollow one for a number of reasons. The relief ordered is both partial and temporary. It's an injunction, which means it has a limited time period, and eventually it will expire. It also essentially, like many of these decisions, gives the Trump administration a blueprint. Hey, here's what you did wrong. You can go back and do it right. And if the problem, for example, is Elon Musk's involvement, then they know now they can step it back in a way that will pass constitutional muster. But make no mistake about it, restoring access to USAID for an agency that's already been shuttered is kind of like giving CPR to a dead body, because what is even left of USAID at this point, that what employees even are interested in coming back and accessing their email and resurrecting what's left of this shell of an agency?
Hard to put the genie back in the bottle.
Exactly. Better analogy. Thank you.
All right.
Thanks, Danny. Well, President Trump is facing pushback from a member of the nation's highest court. Chief Justice John Roberts defended a district judge yesterday after the president suggested he should be impeached for trying to block deportations. NBC News senior White House correspondent Garrett Haake has the details.
Chief Justice John Roberts delivering a rare rebuke to President Trump after the president called for the impeachment of a federal judge who tried to block the swift deportation of nearly 300 undocumented migrants the White House says are violent gang members. Trump labeling Judge James Boasberg a radical left lunatic, prompting the Chief Justice to write, quote, "For more than 2 centuries, it has been established that impeachment is not an appropriate response to disagreement concerning a judicial decision. This after the president used the 18th century Alien Enemies Act to deport what DHS says included Tren de Aragua gang members to a prison in El Salvador. Boasberg had verbally ordered the flights to turn around, but the White House says it complied with his written order that did not include those instructions.
He's attempting to meddle in national security and foreign affairs, and he can't do it. These are foreign terrorists. The president has identified them and designated them as such, and we will continue to follow the Alien Enemies Act.
But attorney Lindsay Tuzlowski represents a Venezuelan migrant who she says lawfully requested asylum last year when he was immediately detained over concerns about his tattoos. She says in a court hearing yesterday, ICE lawyers said her client, whom she's not naming due to fears for his safety, was among those deported.
So the only evidence the government has that your client is a gang member are his tattoos?
That's correct. He is, in fact, a law-abiding citizen with no criminal record who has never been in any kind of custody until he was in civil ICE custody and now in El Salvador in a prison.
The White House says federal law enforcement is certain of the identities and threats posed by those deported. Garrett Haig, NBC News.
Another legal blow to President Trump. Yesterday, a federal judge blocked his executive order that bans transgender people from serving in the military. The judge ruled the ban violates the Fifth Amendment's Equal Protection Clause because it discriminates based on transgender status and sex. The ruling is in response to a lawsuit that was filed by 6 active duty service members who are trans and 2 others who want to enlist. The judge called the language of Mr. Trump's order, quote, unabashedly demeaning. She added, thousands of transgender service members have sacrificed, some risking their lives, to ensure for others the very equal protection rights the military ban seeks to deny them. She did delay her order until Friday to give the Trump administration time to appeal it. The White House and the Justice Department did not immediately reply to NBC News' request for comment.
Let's get over to weather now. Blizzard warnings are in effect across the upper Midwest. Let's get a look at what to expect with your Morning News Now forecast.
That does not sound like spring, Angie.
It sure doesn't, guys. But we do have a little bit of this kind of spring-like severe weather expected as well. So multi-season kind of thing happening across a big chunk of the country. Specifically this morning, it's quite active for the Central Plains, and parts of the upper Midwest will get in on this action as well. But notice the heavy snow we're seeing, a whole lot of lightning. I wouldn't be surprised if we've got some thunder snow kind of in there around the Omaha area. We've also got this line of thunderstorms that we're tracking across that region. And we've got the heavy winds. That's why the blizzard warnings are in effect. So again, travel is going to be difficult across this region. That stretches up into the upper peninsula of Michigan. You can see the kind of slew of winter alerts that we have, topping about 7 million right now. That travel is going to be difficult across this area and points south. Why south? Well, we've still got those really strong winds. So yesterday we saw areas of blowing dust. That's going to be another problematic issue for folks here across this region today. And we've got about 71 million people under these wind alerts, with winds expected to be 40, 50, even close to 70 miles per hour across parts of the center of the country. On top of that, we've got fire alerts. So 27 million people under these fire alerts. Again, a potential for fires to start and spread quickly with those really strong winds and the really dry vegetation. Here's the spring-like part of this storm system, the severe threat. 19 million people centered mainly from Ohio to Illinois. It does include slivers of Michigan and Iowa, but really Champaign, Illinois, right in the smack dab middle of that. We see Chicago, Evansville, Indianapolis also included there. And we will have the potential to see several tornadoes. Some of those could be EF2 or higher. Wind gusts, hail also on the table. This system's going to move a little farther to the east tomorrow, and it's the I-95 corridor that'll see some rain, specifically into that evening kind of time frame later after the commute. I think we'll see some of that rain, but the airport delays, guys, are going to be out there. This will be something that we see across, especially the Midwest today: Kansas City, St. Louis, Chicago, Nashville, Dallas. Not places that I want to be traveling in and out of today.
No kidding.
If you don't have patience.
Ooh, yeah, there you go. Angie.
Thankfully, we're all very patient.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Thanks, Angie. See you in an hour.
Got it.
Well, astronauts Butch Wilmore and Sunny Williams are waking up this morning to the feeling of gravity for the first time in more than 9 months.
Yeah, they finally returned to Earth last night in a SpaceX capsule, bringing an end to their much longer than expected space tour. NBC News senior correspondent Tom Costello reports on the splashdown.
Now gently coasting to a soft splashdown.
Finally, after 286 days and more than 121 million miles, Butch and Sunny's original 10-day mission has come to an end.
And splashdown, Crew 9 back on Earth.
Inside that SpaceX Dragon capsule, Butch Wilmore and Sunny Williams on the space station since last June, after NASA became concerned that their new Boeing Starliner spaceship wasn't safe to bring them home. In September, they joined Crew 9 when astronaut Nick Hague and Russian cosmonaut Alexander Gorbanov docked with the station. All four began packing their spaceship for the ride home. Then, just after 1 a.m., somewhere over the Pacific,
Sunny Williams and Butch Wilmore began their belated trip home.
They pulled away from the ISS.
On behalf of Crew 9, I'd like to say it was a privilege to call station home.
To Crew 9, safe journey home.
We love you guys.
Travel time, 17 hours, from 17,000 miles per hour to 0.
It's loud, it's dynamic. That final splashdown into the water, it's like a very low-speed car crash. You feel the force of impact, you hear it, and then you're in the water waiting to be recovered by the incredible recovery team.
And begin readjusting to gravity, with NASA doctors watching for cardiac, blood pressure, vision, and neurological changes.
Their skin has been adjusting to the lack of gravity. And one of the biggest things is their actual coordination centers within their inner ear and the brain that's connected to it. So all of a sudden they get this shock to that system.
Butch and Sonny's excellent adventure is finally over.
Butch and Sonny are back on Earth, so are the other two crew members. The world has been watching this crew very closely after Butch and Sonny ended up on this very extended stay on the space station. SpaceX ground teams right now are helping out Butch, Sonny, the other astronauts. They all seem to be in good health just off the coast of Tallahassee. A picture-perfect return to Earth after 4,576 Earth orbits.
Thank you, Tom. Appreciate it. For more, let's bring in former astronaut and our good friend, Mike Massimino. Mike, good to see you. I mean, it looks like it was textbook yesterday. I mean, what do you think about how it all went down?
Joe, yeah, I don't think it could be any better. And I think one of the reasons they brought him back a couple days earlier than initially planned was because the weather was going to be so good. So they had some great conditions as the chutes opened up and gave him that jolt. Coming down, the winds were favorable and really no wind from what I could tell. And then when they hit the water, the ocean was nice and calm. So really good recovery conditions. It was great to see them to get out of that spacecraft back on Earth and reunited with their families.
Mike, when they were removed from the capsule, they were placed onto stretchers. Just explain why that is. And from your own experience, what does it feel like physically to return to Earth?
Well, Savannah, it's you got to get used to gravity again, and you feel off balance. My missions were relatively short compared to this one. I was up there for 14 days and 12 days, and not these long missions, but still, my balance was off, and you feel like you're going to fall over, and you really got to be really careful. I think that astronaut stretcher or that astronaut cart, whatever it is that they put him in, whatever they call that thing, I think that's to alleviate any peer pressure about walking around. When we were at the shuttle, the cool thing to do after landing on the shuttle was to do the walk around. And I remember all the veterans when I was a rookie was like, oh, the cool test pod, we're going to do a walk around of the spaceship after. And I had to be really careful. I didn't want to fall over while the cameras are running or walking around the spaceship. So they've alleviated all the peer pressure now. Everyone's getting in the cart, no matter how you're feeling.
We've discussed how you essentially ordered your pizza to be waiting for you when you finally did get down. I still don't think we know what they ate right away, but what is the one bit of advice you have for them as they're now waking up to their first full day back on Earth in pretty darn close to a year?
Yeah, well, they've done this before. Both of them are very experienced astronauts. I think the only advice I would have that maybe they cannot realize fully is how much attention was placed on the two of them and their mission and their return and their whole odyssey that they've been on. I think it's hard to realize that when you're up there in space doing your job of what the reaction is down on Earth. And this is quite unusual. I mean, typically when you go on a space mission, everyone is very supportive and people are interested, and you guys cover it, of course. But this is a little bit different. So I think the welcome and the demands on them, people are going to want to hear their story, are going to be paying attention. And I would say to them, just be prepared, because this is going to be, I think, a lot of attention thrown in their direction. And I think they're going to comply and let us know what it was like and thank everybody.
I hope so. Mike Massimino, thanks for being with us through every step of this one.
You bet.
Friend of the show, author of Moonshot, a NASA astronaut's guide to achieving the impossible. We appreciate you, Mike. We'll see you soon. Thanks.
All right, much more to come here on Morning News Now. Later this hour, doctors sounding the alarm over a bizarre wellness trend. Why they say beef tallow could do you more harm than good.
Up first, though, it's been the subject of controversy and conspiracy theories for decades. Now, hundreds of files on the assassination of JFK have just been released. That story when we come back.
Welcome back. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is warning that a deadly attack on Gaza overnight is, quote, only the beginning. Hundreds of people were killed, according to the health ministry in Hamas-ruled Gaza. The attack ended Israel's ceasefire deal with Hamas. Netanyahu said he's open to talks with Hamas, but that they would be under fire. NBC's international correspondent Matt Bradley has the latest.
War has returned to Gaza. Israeli missiles pummeling what they say are Hamas targets, including, the IDF says, killing the head of the Hamas government there. The Hamas-run Gazan Ministry of Health said the death toll is above 400, most of them women and children. They bombed our camps over the heads of the displaced people, this man said. They bombed the tents over the heads of sleeping people. Before the ceasefire ended, Hamas had released nearly 36 hostages in exchange for about 2,000 Palestinian prisoners. President Trump had demanded all the hostages be released, but negotiations had stalled. The U.S. and Israel blaming Hamas for rejecting all proposals from Trump's envoy.
Hamas refused offer after offer to release our hostages.
Why was this done now?
We have indications, and we've seen Hamas try and rearm and regroup.
But for the family of American Idan Alexander, kidnapped by Hamas on October 7th, new fighting carries real risks. Do you worry that this military action could put your son at greater danger?
Any military action will put remaining hostages in danger. No question about it. That's why our hope really that it will be limited.
A hope shared by both hostage families and Gazan civilians.
Our thanks to Matt Bradley for that report. The IDF has issued evacuation orders for large parts of northern and eastern Gaza, raising concerns that another attack is on the horizon. The U.S. government has now released what could be the final classified files on the 1963 assassination of President John F. Kennedy, including 80,000 pages of previously unseen documents that's following an order from President Trump.
And many documents were actually already available, but still conspiracy theories continue to challenge the official findings that Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone when he fired the fatal shots. Here's NBC News Chief Washington correspondent Andrea Mitchell with the latest.
Thousands of pages of documents finally released, including files from the CIA and FBI's secret investigations into President John F. Kennedy's assassination. Lawyers at the Justice Department working all night to review the classified files, according to a person familiar with the matter, after President Trump announced their release.
I don't believe we're going to redact anything. I said, just don't redact.
The president signing the executive order calling for the documents' release on his 4th day in office.
I think it's a great move.
The overwhelming majority of the 6 million assassination-related records had already been released. In 1964, the Warren Commission concluded that Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone when he fired that fatal shot at President Kennedy's motorcade in Dallas. But still, so many questions. What was Oswald doing at the Soviet embassy in Mexico months earlier? Why did he try to obtain a visa to Cuba? Was Cuban dictator Fidel Castro involved, or J. Edgar Hoover's FBI, even the CIA? The mystery deepened 2 days after the assassination when Oswald was killed in a Dallas jail on live television by a nightclub owner, Jack Ruby. Decades later, the conspiracy theories were further popularized by Oliver Stone's thriller, JFK.
I never realized Kennedy was so dangerous to the establishment.
The number of people who think that there was a conspiracy has only risen over the last number of decades, increasing distrust in government, splitting our country.
All right, our thanks to Andrea Mitchell for that report. Well, coming up, a major breakthrough with mammoth implications. Scientists creating what they call a woolly mouse as they attempt to bring the woolly mammoth back from extinction.
Plus, back to the basics. New research reveals the most effective way to relieve back pain. Dr. Sayal is in for our weekly checkup. That's next on Morning News Now. Welcome back. It is time for our weekly medical checkup. First, we're looking at why beef tallow is suddenly everywhere, from skincare to cooking, and whether it's really worth the hype.
Also, a new study questions the effectiveness of many common back pain treatments. So we're going to dive into what actually works.
NBC News medical fellow Dr. Akshay Sayal joins us here in person to discuss these health headlines. Good to have you with us. So let's start with beef tallow. It's been touted by wellness influencers. The Health and Human Services Secretary, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., saying it's healthy for food and skincare products. It's almost been politicized. I know there's a fast food chain that's been using it. What are the medical experts actually saying about this?
I'm glad you have been following this, Joe, because this is all we're hearing about, right? Like swapping out seed oils for beef tallow, and it started out in the French fry sort of fast food space, and now it's spreading into the skincare world. And so those TikToks you just saw on the screen there, it's people rubbing it on their face in hopes to fight acne. And NBC spoke to a bunch of dermatologists about this. Is there actually any truth to this? And You know, it doesn't seem so, which is it's not surprising, but there's no real data to back up rubbing a greasy, lardy sort of animal fat on your face is actually going to fight acne, which is not surprising. But guys, for those who don't know, beef tallow is essentially just animal fat. It's you know, next to the internal organs of the cow. It's really not something you want to be rubbing on your face. So doctor's orders here, guys, focus on the big picture. A lot of people are swapping out, you know, seed oils for beef tallow. Just make sure that you're just not, you know, you just want to stay away from ultra-processed foods and keep it balanced, everything in moderation.
All right, there you go. Okay, this next one, a large review. This is a bunch of different studies that found that certain foods could lower your risk of developing, and we just learned this morning, this is pronounced tinnitus, not tinnitus.
Tinnitus. Listen to the way the British do it. It's tinnitus.
What do we find from these studies?
So, by the way, guys, I have this. I don't know, do either of you have it?
Oh, I don't. Wow.
It's for those who don't know, it's a low-pitched ringing in the ear, and I can't get rid of it. It's something that we really don't have a lot of treatment for. And, you know, when patients come to us and they say, how do I fix this? We don't have a lot of good answers. And so every time there's a new study, we kind of turn our heads. So this one here, guys, finding that if you eat fruits, fiber, dairy, those things may actually lower the risk of having that ringing in the ear. And they think it actually lowers the level of inflammation. Still, you know, we need more research to learn more. But guys, the doctor's orders here I think are really important. And I brought AirPods here because if you have tinnitus, you want to make sure that you get your hearing checked. Tinnitus is really closely associated with hearing loss. It is so easy to take a hearing test. You can do it on your AirPods right at your desk today. So you want to make sure that your ears are all good.
And doing one with an AirPod is considered pretty good. I know obviously you want to see a professional if you can, right?
It's FDA validated,
yeah,
Joe,
okay.
So it's a good place to start, and if there is a problem, definitely see a professional.
All right, and finally something that pretty much most of our viewers can relate to. Recent studies estimate about 80% of Americans are going to experience back pain at some point in their life. Wow. One review finds many treatments are not effective. It seems like anyone who deals with back pain struggles with it and can't seem to find the solution, right?
It is the most common complaint we get, right? It's people who have back pain acutely in the short term, people who have chronic back pain. You can see some treatments on your screen there. I mean, there's a whole host of things we try. Ibuprofen, like NSAIDs, like naproxen, that other one. For chronic back pain, it tends to be more physical therapy and treatments like that. But guys, this review today finding that only 1 in 10 of these are really actually effective. None of those things you just see on your screen there have a whole lot of data behind it to really support it. So, you know, our doctor's orders here, if you are suffering from back pain, obviously prevention is key. Make sure if you are exercising in the gym, you are taking all the precautions. But guys, if nothing is working for you, you may have to go down the surgical route. Don't, I know it's scary, but, you know, we're finding that those other things may not work as well.
All right. Dr. Sayal, good to have you with us. Thank you so much.
Good to see you here. Well, there's now some good news for scientists and fans of animals that we've only read about in history books. A company based in Dallas has created the first ever woolly mouse. It's genetically derived from the better-known and long-extinct woolly mammoth. NBC News correspondent Morgan Chesky takes us inside the lab's efforts to revive an ancient species.
They're small. Some would say even cute.
So this is Chip on the left, and that's Dale on the right.
2 woolly mice made famous, born on the cutting edge of science.
These are the most precision-edited animals on the planet. We're not happy about it. We're thrilled about it.
The DNA breakthrough by Colossal Biosciences, all part of CEO Ben Lamb's plan to resurrect the woolly mammoth and other extinct species and return balance to ailing ecosystems.
We actually took the genes that made a mammoth, mapped them to mice, and in only 1 month, we produced living, healthy little mice.
So we're here to tell people before woolly mammoths come mice?
Before woolly mammoths, we get woolly mice. This is a validation step on our way to the mammoth.
Colossal altering 7 mammoth genes, such as hair thickness, color, and ability to store fat, key for cold environments before applying them to Chip and Dale.
I never thought that mice could captivate and inspire the way these two guys have.
Colossal's chief animal officer, Matt James, says pictures are pouring in from all over the country. Students inspired by science, he says, could save endangered species and usher a new era of conservation.
To the skeptics who say Colossal's playing God, what do you say?
I would argue that we have a real issue as humanity of playing God every day with nature. I think what we're doing is trying to reverse the course, try to repair the sins that humanity's already committed.
Colossal says its first woolly mammoth is on track for 2028. These two more than happy to soak up the spotlight. Till then, Morgan Chesky, NBC News, Dallas.
Kind of cute.
I know, it's a little weird that I agree with that.
Coming up, fire and frustration, vandals targeting Teslas as controversy grows over CEO Elon Musk.
When we come back, the string of crimes now under investigation. This is Morning News Now. We are back with a pair of fiery scenes in Las Vegas and Kansas City after Tesla vehicles were set on fire. It appears to be the latest in a string of vandalism attacks against the car company.
It's coming at a time when Americans are growing increasingly frustrated with its CEO, billionaire Elon Musk. He's orchestrating several of President Trump's controversial cuts within the federal government. NBC News correspondent Liz Kreutz has more on the fires.
Authorities investigating what they're calling a targeted attack on a Tesla repair center in Las Vegas. This dramatic video showing multiple cars in flames. When police arrived, they found 5 vehicles set on fire or damaged, and the word resist spray painted on the front of the business.
We believe the suspect approached the business wearing all black clothing, and he used what appear to be Molotov cocktails and a firearm to conduct his attack.
Just hours before in Kansas City, 2 Tesla Cybertrucks set ablaze at a dealership there. The FBI stepping in to help local police investigate both incidents.
To those who might think that something like this is justifiable or potentially even admirable, we want to let you know it's a federal crime. We will come after you.
While authorities say the identities of the suspects and the motivation behind the attacks are still unknown, it comes amid at least 16 reports of vandalism to Tesla vehicles and dealerships across the country as people nationwide protest Tesla CEO Elon Musk and his prominent role in the Trump administration.
We're out here because we're defending democracy.
President Trump sending a warning to those who vandalize Tesla property.
You do it to Tesla and you do it to any company, we're going to catch you and you're going to go through hell.
Tesla stock seeing a sharp drop, down more than 40% this year. Musk reposting the video from Las Vegas, calling the incident terrorism. Liz Kreutz, NBC News.
Purdue Pharma has filed a new Chapter 11 bankruptcy plan, pledging more than $7 billion to compensate victims of the opioid crisis.
CNBC's Silvana Henao joins us with that and other money news. Hey, Silvana.
Savannah, Joe, good morning to you. Yes, so Purdue Pharma filing a new bankruptcy plan as the company tries to finalize a proposed settlement of at least $7 billion for its alleged role in the opioid crisis. Now, the payments would resolve thousands of lawsuits alleging Purdue's pain medication OxyContin caused widespread addiction. Now, under this new plan, Purdue's owners, that's the Sackler family, would contribute the majority of the settlement. Last year, the U.S. Supreme Court rejected a plan that would have granted the Sacklers immunity. Chinese tech giant Tencent reporting a big bounce in quarterly revenue today as its gaming business rebounds. Tencent is the world's largest video game company and also operates the WeChat messaging platform. Tencent's business has recovered in China over the past year thanks to successful launches of games such as Delta Force. It's also benefiting from an easing of regulations in China's gaming sector. And get this, AI will take your order. Yeah, Yum Brands, that's the parent company of Taco Bell, KFC, and Pizza Hut, is partnering with NVIDIA to develop a number of AI-powered services, and they include voice ordering at the drive-thru lane and on the phone, which will start rolling out at 500 restaurants this spring. Other changes include the use of computers to spot mistakes in orders and AI that filters internet comments to be used as feedback by managers. How are they going to spot the mistakes in orders? I don't know.
Because it reads your mind, Silvana.
Right?
That's the path we're going down.
Yeah. All right. Now I want Taco Bell. Thanks, Silvana. Coming up, she's making her hoop dreams come true at 88 years old.
Yeah, up next, we're going to introduce you to the grandma, a Celtics superfan who just got the shot of a lifetime. We can't wait to bring you this when you are watching Morning News Now. welcome back. WNBA fans are getting their first scripted TV series. It's called The W. It's a comedy currently being developed by Peacock, which is, of course, owned by our parent company, NBC Universal. The series follows a star rookie and her freshly minted agent as they enter the world of pro women's basketball. Now, the project comes from WNBA All-Star Chiney Ogwumike and the creators of the TV show Glow, which was an awesome show. Ogwumike based the story loosely on her own experiences in the big leagues. Fun fact, it is the first project created under her production company, Victorious.
Oh, very cool.
Love to see stories like that being told right now.
Yeah, especially by someone in the know. That's awesome. Exactly. All right, let's stay on the court and end the hour with a pivot to the NBA.
Yeah, Miss Ruby Lacy, who goes by Nanny, is a big-time Celtics fan. She dreamed of coaching an NBA team, and at 88 years young, well, that dream came true.
This week, Lacy got a personal invite to join the Celtics practice and sit front row for last night's postseason matchup against the Brooklyn Nets with her granddaughter. And her granddaughter, Lacy, and Coach Nanny herself joined us to tell us all about their night. Good morning to both of you. Thank you so much for being here. We're so excited that you got this experience. Lacy, I'm going to start with you and ask if you could just tell us a little bit about how we got here. You posting on TikTok and how people started to know about Coach Nanny and her love for the Celtics.
Yeah, so I've been posting on TikTok for the past few months, and I have a few videos of me doing my grandmother's hair. And a lot of the time, our conversations are about basketball. I'd say 85% of our conversations when we talk during the season are about basketball. So I actually had finished doing her hair and was just left the camera recording. And that's when we started talking about her dreams of being a coach. And that's like, if you know Nanny, all she talks about is basketball, especially Celtics basketball. So that just happened to be the conversation of the day. And I had the camera rolling and then I posted it, not really thinking much of it. And then Fanatics reached out to me and they connected with the Celtics and we got to make her dream come true.
So, Coach Nanny, we have to ask you, I mean, it wasn't just your dream. You got to stop by practice. You got to meet the team. You attended your very first Celtics game, which I think is just unreal that this was the first time you got to do that. And I know you got a little emotional when you first got the news. Your granddaughter even recorded that. I mean, what was it like to have your dreams become a reality?
It just seemed like it was a dream. I just couldn't believe it was happening.
We know that you also got to meet your favorite player, Celtics forward Jason Tatum, and then he reposted your video on his Instagram story. But there's a really sweet video of y'all meeting. What was it like? Tell us what he said to you and why he's your favorite.
I can't remember what he said.
He showed you how to.
I called his attention to my shoes because I had gotten there with
the Jason Tatum shoes.
That was the first thing, yeah.
And he asked me to hug.
Yeah, he said, "Could I get a hug?" I said, "Of course."
What was it like hugging?
Tell them how long you've been following Tatum.
Since the draft.
Wow.
Since the draft, and I saw him. I said, "That is my boy."
She thought he was going to be a star from that.
Yeah, I said, "He's the one. That is the one."
Lacy, what was it like for you to see your grandma's dream come true in such a big way?
It's so cool. We're so grateful to everyone at the Celtics. They were all so nice from the moment we walked into the practice facility till we left the game yesterday. Everyone was so nice to us, and it was better than I could have imagined. I think growing up, you see your grandparents do so much, and they give you so much, and there's not really much you can do because she's not into, like, material gifts. There's really nothing we could have given her that would have possibly compared to this. And being able to see her do this at 88 was just such a gift, and we're so grateful.
Oh, so sweet to hear how much you love her and how much it means to you to get to do something like this for her. Coach Nanny, they might need to bring you on full time because they dominated last night, 104-96, winning against the Nets. Did y'all give them any pointers ahead of the game?
He told Jaylen Brown their two toughest competitors for this season are who?
Cleveland and OKC. I say, you got boys, you got to be on it you gotta go after them because they waiting for you.
Yeah, it's exciting to see championship number 19, right?
Yeah.
There you go. Coach Nanny, you know what you're talking about. We love to talk to y'all. Coach Nanny Lacey, thank you so much. And we're just so happy for you that you had this experience together.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
I think they're going to have you back. You're a good luck charm.
Yeah,
All right,
exactly.
That is going to do it for this hour of Morning News Now.
Stay with us, though. The news continues right now. Good morning. Thanks for joining us this Wednesday. I'm Savannah Sellers.
I'm Joe Fryer. Right now on Morning News Now, a Supreme Court stunner that's putting the Chief Justice at odds with the Trump administration. The president's recent calls to impeach a federal judge now drawing a rare rebuke from John Roberts. His searing statement as a new legal challenge threatens Elon Musk's efforts to gut USAID. Also this morning, call to action. Consequential conversation between President Trump and Russia's Vladimir Putin at high-stakes one-on-one, now laying the groundwork for a partial ceasefire in Moscow's war on Ukraine. The Russian leader promising an immediate end to attacks on Ukraine's energy infrastructure. But what's President Zelensky saying about it all, and what comes next? We're breaking it all down. Plus, it is one of the most notorious moments in American history now back in the national spotlight. What we're learning from the latest batch of newly declassified files on the assassination of President John F. Kennedy. Those docs brought to light by President Trump more than 60 years later. And down to earth, astronauts Butch Wilmore and Sunny Williams finally waking up on the planet that they've been observing from space for more than 9 months. Their epic splashdown in the Atlantic, and what happens now after the voyage of a lifetime, which seemed to last a lifetime. The good news is the hard part's over. Now it's all easy from this point on.
Right. There you go.
All right, let's begin this hour with key parts of President Trump's agenda facing new legal pushback. Yesterday, a pair of federal judges moved to reverse his administration's efforts on two key issues: shutting down foreign aid and preventing transgender people from serving in the military.
Meanwhile, Supreme Court Justice John Roberts defended one of those judges after the president suggested he should be impeached. NBC News Chief White House Correspondent Peter Alexander has more on the extraordinary rebuke. Peter, good morning.
Hey, Joe, Savannah, good morning to you. The president's allies have called for various judges to be removed for blocking administration policies in the first months of his second term. But President Trump himself raised the stakes by arguing a judge who ruled against him should be impeached. In fact, many presidents, Democrats and Republicans, have seen their policies stopped or stalled by a single federal judge. But President Trump is doubling down. Overnight, President Trump responding to an extraordinary and rare rebuke from the Supreme Court's Chief Justice John Roberts, a conservative. It comes after the president called for the impeachment of a federal judge who ruled against his administration in a high-stakes deportation case.
He didn't mention my name, but many people have called for his impeachment, the impeachment of this judge. I don't know who the judge is, but he's radical left.
That federal judge, James Boasberg, ordered the halt of deportation flights carrying Venezuelan migrants that the Trump administration has labeled gang members. The administration using an obscure 18th century law, the Alien Enemies Act, to send them to prisons in El Salvador. In response to the earlier social media post by the president calling for Judge Boasberg to be impeached, Chief Justice Roberts writing, "For more than 2 centuries, it's been established that impeachment is not an appropriate response to disagreement concerning a judicial decision," adding the appeals process exists for that purpose. Last night, the president was asked if he would defy a court order.
I never did defy a court order.
And you wouldn't in the future?
No, you can't do that. However, we have bad judges. We have very bad judges.
Just before his administration was dealt new blows by the courts. Late yesterday, a federal judge blocking his day-one effort to ban transgender people from serving in the military. And another federal judge ruling that billionaire Elon Musk and his Department of Government Efficiency's unilateral actions to shut down USAID likely violated the Constitution. The agency provides billions in aid, including food and medicine, to foreign countries. It comes as some Republicans have faced blowback over Musk's role, like Nebraska Congressman Mike Flood, who responded to concerns in a contentious town hall last night.
I support Elon Musk and the Department of Government Efficiency.
Back to those deportation flights. How has the administration determined who should be deported? The White House has said these deportees are members of a violent Venezuelan gang, and administration officials say the individuals have been investigated and vetted. But families and lawyers for some of these accused gang members argue that they've been wrongly singled out. The lawyer from one of them telling NBC News that her client is a law-abiding citizen, claiming that he was targeted simply because of his tattoos. Joe and Savannah, back to you.
All right, Peter, thank you.
The war between Russia and Ukraine is showing no signs of slowing down after both countries carried out drone attacks overnight. Those attacks come after Russia's President Putin rejected President Trump's proposal for a full 30-day ceasefire. Instead, the Russian leader agreed to pause attacks on energy infrastructure. NBC News chief foreign correspondent Richard Engel has the latest from eastern Ukraine.
Here in Ukraine, the ceasefire never took hold, even after the conversation between President Putin and President Trump. Ukraine's President Zelensky said he will be speaking with President Trump today. Ukraine says Russia fired dozens of drones even after President Putin agreed to a partial ceasefire in a phone call with President Trump. Among the targets, a hospital near the city of Sumy, according to Ukrainian officials, and a railway power station, according to the company. Ukraine's President Zelensky, who already accepted a U.S. proposal for a total ceasefire if Putin does the same, said this morning Putin's words are at odds with reality and that Russia is not ready to end the war. Ukraine launched dozens of its own drones at Russia, hitting an energy site, according to officials there. President Putin agreed to suspend attacks on Ukraine's energy and infrastructure for 30 days, according to a readout from the White House, and enter negotiations soon in the Middle East for a full ceasefire and permanent peace. President Trump described his nearly 2-hour call with Putin as positive.
And Putin actually said to me, if you're my friend, I'd hate to see you as my enemy. He said that very strongly. But with all of that, I had a very good relationship with Putin.
Outside of Kharkiv, near the front lines in eastern Ukraine, these volunteers are following Russian troops with drones, operating out of a mobile command center they built themselves. Ivan Kravchenko has no faith Putin will honor any agreement with Ukraine. Russia wants to play its game, and they are interested in the truce only in order to increase their military power, he said. In a nearby safe house, the unit commander showed me an operation as it unfolded, a Russian mortar position being attacked by Ukrainian bombs.
Do you think that Putin is playing President Trump?
Yeah, sure. Putin is trying to deceive everybody because he thinks he's a master of spy games and deceivement. Nobody can trust him.
In his conversation with President Trump, President Putin said he also wants a series of U.S. versus Russia hockey games to improve relations. Currently, Russia is banned from international hockey competition.
All right, Richard, thank you very much. Well, let's keep this conversation going with Max Bergman. He's the director of the Europe, Russia, and Eurasia program at the Center for Strategic and International Studies. Thanks very much for being with us. So President Putin agreed to that pause on energy infrastructure attacks. Is this a good enough initial outcome from these conversations with President Trump?
Well, it's a start. You know, it would have been more significant if that announcement happened before winter, when there's a lot of concern about Ukraine getting through the winter with all the attacks on its energy sector. But it's not much of a concession, especially, you know, in that segment you just showed. Ukraine is attacking Russian energy infrastructure, and that's something Russia is quite concerned about. So I think it's not a clear sign that there's any indication that Russia actually wants a ceasefire or to end the fighting. And I think that's something that a lot of Russia analysts have been wanting to see. Is there any indication from Vladimir Putin that he actually wants a permanent settlement to this war and wants the fighting to stop? And I frankly just haven't seen it yet.
The Kremlin said in its readout that it had called for a halt to all foreign military aid, intelligence sharing to Ukraine, ultimately as a ceasefire condition. We should note the White House's readout did not include that same detail, but we did see the Trump administration do just that, temporarily suspend both of those in the wake of that disastrous Oval Office meeting between Presidents Trump and Zelensky. Do you think Mr. Trump could do that again in order to push through this truce and essentially at the request of Russia this time, not because of his own decision and feelings towards Zelensky after a personal meeting?
I do think that's possible, and I think that is what is terrifying the Ukrainians, because what I think seems very clear to them, to the Ukrainians, is that what Russia wants, if there is going to be any halt to the fighting, is for Ukraine to either get weaker or to stay how it is militarily. All the while, Russia would keep getting support from the Iranians, from the North Koreans, from the Chinese, and Russia would continue to rearm itself and rebuild its forces. So what Russia wants, and I think that's pretty clear from its demands to agree to a ceasefire, is to put itself in a better position to win the war once a ceasefire were to end. So I think for Ukraine, they're very skeptical about Russia's intentions, I think rightly so. And I think they're nervous that the United States might follow along and cut off military deliveries to Ukraine, which are absolutely vital for Ukraine's war effort.
All right, Max Bergman, thank you very much for your expertise. We appreciate your time this morning.
The parents of the missing University of Pittsburgh student are speaking out for the first time. They're sharing their heartbreak nearly 2 weeks after their daughter disappeared while on a spring break trip in the Dominican Republic. Yesterday, the man believed to be the last known person to see her live appeared in court, and it was a tense and chaotic hearing. NBC News correspondent Jesse Kirsch joins us once again from Punta Cana, Dominican Republic, with the latest. Jesse, good morning.
Hey, Joe, good morning. This was truly surreal to witness. There were people climbing on courtroom benches, including right behind me. There were people blocking the aisle. All of this just to see Joshua Reeby, who entered and then left that courtroom without everything he wanted.
Joshua, you have your passport back?
This morning, Joshua Reeby appears to still be stranded in the Dominican Republic after a judge on Monday granted a partial legal victory to the American at the center of a high-profile missing person case. The 22-year-old from Iowa has been under intense scrutiny for days because he may have been the last person seen with Sudiksha Kunanki, the University of Pittsburgh student who vanished in Punta Cana on March 6th. Reeby's lawyers say as the search for Kunanki intensified, his passport was confiscated, with police escorting him anywhere he goes. The college senior saying in court, "I really just want to be able to go home." The more than 2-hour hearing repeatedly devolving into a shouting match between Reeby's lawyers and prosecutors, who argued Reeby has never been detained. They say he's a witness, not a suspect, but they still oppose his push for freedom.
The idea that the most important witness in a case that could potentially become a criminal case is about to leave their jurisdiction forever likely has them worried.
The prosecution also says it does not have Reeby's passport. We pushed for answers in their first on-camera interview about that.
Excuse me, sir, which branch of the government has Joshua Reeby's passport, if you don't?
I don't know the passport.
So you don't know anything about the passport?
I don't speak Spanish, English. Sorry.
You're speaking English right now. So you don't know anything about the passport?
The judge later siding with Reeby, saying he has the right to move freely without a police escort, but adding the passport issue belongs in another venue.
Very bright student.
Earlier, Sudiksha Kunanki's emotional parents spoke on camera for the first time since police say the family wrote them a letter asking for a legal declaration of her death. NBC station in Washington, D.C. was there.
We are coming to the terms with the fact that our daughter has drowned. This is incredibly difficult for us to process.
Reeby previously told police that he had pulled Kunanki into shallower water while the two were in the ocean. Yesterday in court, he said Kunanki's mother told him, "Thank you very much for helping save my daughter the first time." Reeby later refusing to answer reporters' questions as he left the court.
So, Jesse, Reeby can't leave the country, right? What happens next?
At this point, Joe, it's unclear if he can leave the country, and even if he found a way to get closer to leaving the country, if he would be allowed to, and here's why. At this point, it appears he does not have his passport. According to CNN, Reeby's lawyer says they're trying to get him a new one from the U.S. Embassy. We have repeatedly reached out to the State Department about this case, and they have not commented on Reeby's situation. So that's an open-ended question. But let's say he gets a new passport. There's still another curveball. The judge scheduled another hearing for his case on March 28th, and it's not clear if he has to be there in person. So we don't know if Dominican authorities would let Reeby leave the country even if he had a passport in his hand. Joe.
All right, Jesse Kirsch. Jesse, thank you.
Well, this morning, the government has declassified what could be the last official files on the assassination of President John F. Kennedy. The release, following an executive order from President Trump, comes more than 60 years after the incident. To this day, many Americans still question what really happened back in 1963 and who was involved. NBC News correspondent Sam Brock has more.
Overnight, the National Archives posting tens of thousands of pages related to the assassination of President John F. Kennedy, including files from the CIA and FBI. Though they may reveal more about the practices of the agencies themselves than provide any seismic news about JFK's assassination.
People who think there's going to be some revelation or a list of the co-conspirators in the assassination are in for a long period of depression or disappointment, because that's not in there.
The batch released following an executive order issued by President Trump.
Everything will be revealed.
This is the second release of Kennedy papers under Trump, but unlike previous instances, the documents aren't sorted or categorized in any way. In 1964, the Warren Commission concluded that Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone when he fired that fatal shot at Kennedy's motorcade in Dallas. But many Americans weren't convinced. For decades, the sealed documents adding fuel to conspiracy after conspiracy. Was Lee Harvey Oswald a Soviet agent? Was the mob or Fidel Castro behind JFK's killing? What did leaders at the CIA and FBI know?
The number of people who think that there was a conspiracy has only risen over the last number of decades, increasing distrust in government, splitting our country.
Scholars say the new documents are unlikely to put any unsubstantiated claims to rest, but could still contain valuable information. Dr. Larry Sabato at the University of Virginia says that includes documents from intelligence officials about Lee Harvey Oswald's background and time in Russia.
The CIA lied for many, many years in claiming that they knew nothing about Oswald and they had no idea that he was doing X, Y, and Z or would be a danger to anyone, much less the president.
Some of the documents still appear to contain redactions, as House Republicans have launched a new task force on the declassification of federal secrets. The head of that group saying she doesn't believe Oswald was the lone gunman.
9 months in space, Butch Wilmore and Sunny Williams are waking up back on Earth. Their SpaceX capsule splashed down off the coast of Florida last night, ending their much longer than expected space tour. NBC News senior correspondent Tom Costello has the latest.
Yeah, hey there. And veteran astronauts tell us Butch and Sunny are probably really feeling the effects of gravity this morning. Everything probably feels very heavy, right? Their legs, their arms, their coffee cups. They may be even a bit wobbly on their feet and kind of lightheaded, but they're with their families now, and hopefully they got a good night's sleep at the crew quarters in Houston.
And splashdown, Crew 9 back on Earth.
Off the coast of Tallahassee, they made it look easy. A spectacular splashdown, marking the end of an unexpectedly long journey for astronauts Butch Wilmore and Sunny Williams. And overnight, the group arriving at NASA's Johnson Space Center in Houston. Butch's daughter sharing a photo of their family reunion. It's been a long time coming after an unexpectedly 9.5-month tour on the International Space Station.
Nick, Alex, Butch, Sunny, on behalf of SpaceX, welcome home.
The pair hitched a ride back to Earth with astronaut Nick Hague and cosmonaut Alexander Gorbanov aboard a SpaceX Dragon capsule named Freedom. A 17-hour autonomous flight that landed with the help of a picture-perfect parachute deployment. Adding to the celebration, a pod of dolphins even appeared to join in welcoming Crew 9 back home. Recovery teams moving in. Some waves, some thumbs up, and a lot of smiles. With the flight portion of their mission now over, this morning the readjustment is now underway. That includes monitoring for any cardiac, blood pressure, vision, or neurological changes, and getting used to gravity. Astronaut Woody Hoberg logged 186 days on his first space flight.
I remember that first time attempting to walk. It almost felt like my legs were not attached to me.
And experts say their immune systems have also undergone changes during their 286 days in space.
They have to deal with being back on Earth. So that means all the little germs and bugs that we have. So their immune system has been suppressed over a period of time.
NASA says after they're evaluated and cleared, Butch and Sunny will get some well-deserved time off as they finally relax at home with their families.
Their families are the ones that really, kudos to them for being resilient in a planned short-duration flight now turning into a long duration.
So now they go through several days of medical exams and tests, but the fact that they both stayed so physically fit on station, exercising for 2 hours a day, that should help alleviate the nausea and the aches from their newfound gravity. They also will start a very big mission review process, but the priority right now is actually with family. Back to you.
All right, Tom, thank you so much.
All right, let's get you to weather. Winter is returning to the upper Midwest this week. For more, let's take a look at your Morning News Now forecast.
Angie Lastman's here. Angie, good morning.
Hi, guys. Good morning. I can hear the moans and groans of people that are upset that we've got snow in the forecast. Unfortunately, 'tis the season. We're in late March, and we'll eventually transition to kind of a more typical springtime pattern. But we've got thunderstorms out there. We've got really strong winds. We've got snow. We've got blizzard conditions. So not a great day for travel, specifically Chicago, Kansas City, St. Louis, Nashville, and Dallas. I'd still watch Detroit and Minneapolis as well. And here's why. This is what we're really seeing being quite active this morning. Notice there's some thunderstorms in there. Notice we're seeing some snowfall, but also likely some thunder snow kind of embedded into that heavy snow that's falling across that region. We've got really strong winds for folks in that area. So no surprise that a big area of the middle of the country is in this blizzard warning. In total, 7 million people under winter alerts. We've got a reduced visibility here across this area. So this is going to be difficult, as I mentioned, for travel. On top of that, we'll also see areas of blowing dust, something we saw yesterday. We've got the fire weather out there as well with that low humidity and these strong winds. And the winds will be impressive, 50, 60 plus miles per hour, specifically across the Central Plains. There's the fire alerts, 27 million people. Again, this is something we've been dealing with across that region through the past couple of days. Today will be no different. On top of that, yes, the heavy snow, but also the severe risk. We've got 19 million people that could see several tornadoes, maybe some strong tornadoes at that EF2 or higher, and the wind gusts and large hail will be impactful as well. Tomorrow, this system moves to the east, and it'll bring us some heavy rain along the I-95 corridor. Severe weather, not going to be all that impressive, but something to watch here as we get into the day tomorrow. Meanwhile, temperatures, well, they're quite different as you look to west of the Rockies and east of the Rockies.
Just
We've got mild
pick a place.
Yeah.
Blue, red. That's all we need to see. Thanks, Angie. There's much more to come on this hour of Morning News Now. A little later, we'll dig into the growing privacy concerns surrounding Amazon and Alexa, why people online are sounding the alarm over where their voices are about to end up.
First, after the break, Gaza under fire. Israel ratcheting up deadly violence in the embattled enclave. As Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu now demands Hamas release those final remaining hostages. We are on the ground with the latest next. This morning, rescue teams in Gaza are combing through the rubble looking for survivors following Israel's airstrikes Tuesday. And Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is warning, quote, this is only the beginning. More than 400 people were killed in those airstrikes, according to the health ministry in Hamas-ruled Gaza. The attack ended a ceasefire deal with Hamas that took effect earlier this year. First phase of the deal expired at the beginning of the month. Netanyahu said he was open to more talks with Hamas, but that negotiations would take place under fire. NBC News international correspondent Matt Bradley joins us now from Tel Aviv with the latest. Matt, good morning. So this attack marks really one of the deadliest days since Israel's war with Hamas began. Tell us more just about the current situation on the ground.
Yeah, well, it looks as though the attacks have kind of lettened up from what we saw overnight, night before last. So that was the really deadly night where we saw very quickly after the Israelis decided to start once again bombarding the Gaza Strip. We saw the death toll rise very quickly to about 400 or more than that. So far, we have seen, according to Hamas, or according to health authorities in the Gaza Strip, which is ruled by Hamas, we've seen 17 people being killed ever since last night. But we have heard that bombardments are continuing so far. We haven't heard about a ground invasion, and very crucially here, we haven't heard about any counterattacks from Hamas or other militant groups in the Gaza Strip against the Israelis. So it is an entirely one-sided fight at this moment. We have not seen any real militarized response from any of the armed groups, including Hamas, in the Gaza Strip.
And, Matt, a huge worry for so many amid this renewed fighting is the fate of the 59 remaining hostages in Gaza, more than half of whom are presumed dead. How are their families responding to all of this?
Yeah, well, with protests and with anger, we've heard a lot of them saying that, this is the culmination of their worst fears, that they feel as though they're being once again left out by the government that has said that they're fighting on their behalf. Now, a lot of these hostages, or the families of the hostages and former hostages, believe that renewing the fighting in the Gaza Strip is almost tantamount to a death sentence for those, well, not quite 59, as you mentioned. More than half of those 59 are actually dead, and it's their bodies that are being fought over. But the Netanyahu administration has been repeatedly saying that only military pressure will bring Hamas to the negotiating table and eventually release these hostages. But the fact is, and the numbers speak for themselves, the vast majority of the hostages who have been released so far, and we're talking about well more than in the hundreds, have done so through negotiated settlements between the Israelis and Hamas, mediated by the United States, Qatar, and Egypt. Very few of them have actually been freed through combat operations. And in fact, yesterday I spoke with one man at Martyrs Square in Tel Aviv who said that he was freed, one of the rare people who was freed during a combat operation. And even he said we should not be going back to fighting. There needs to be negotiations to free those remaining hostages.
And Matt, the Israeli military has ordered people to evacuate eastern and other parts of Gaza, indicating another attack might be on the horizon. Real quick, what do we know so far about Israel's strategy here?
Yeah, very little so far. We only know that it looks as though the Israelis have actually been taking pinpoint shots, basically targeted strikes against senior administrators in Hamas. And I make that distinction between administrators and military combatants. That's different. So it looks as though they're trying to lay the groundwork for not having Hamas ruling the territory afterwards. And if you remember, one of the highest profile people who've been killed in the past more than 24 hours of fighting was actually the de facto leader of Hamas in the Gaza Strip. And again, we're talking about a man who is widely considered, at least by Gazans, by Palestinians, to be a civilian, a guy who is running that part of the that enclave on the Mediterranean coast.
All right,
Joe.
Matt Bradley. Matt, thank you. In Hungary, thousands took to the streets to protest a newly passed ban on pride events.
NBC's Matt Bodner joins us with that and other world headlines. Hey, Matt.
Savannah, Joe, good morning. Thousands of protesters took to the streets of Budapest yesterday against this new law. Not only does it ban pride events, but it authorizes the use of facial recognition to identify people who attend pride events. Later in the day, protesters blocked a major bridge crossing the Danube in the heart of the city. The new law is the latest in an ongoing campaign by Hungary's nationalist government to crack down on the country's LGBTQ community. Critics say that the law resembles one passed years ago in Putin's Russia. Moving along now to Mexico City, the city's lawmakers voted overwhelmingly on Tuesday to ban traditional bullfighting, a sport that is a big deal in Mexico City. The move was supported by Mexico's president, Claudia Sheinbaum, but it was opposed by some who see it as an important cultural tradition. That said, there was only one dissenting vote. The new law calls for the city to work with various stakeholders to issue regulations that will allow the sport to continue, just without violence. And we'll wrap up this hour in New Zealand, and it's a heartwarming story. The blobfish, once given the dubious honor of Mother Earth's ugliest animal, has been crowned New Zealand's Fish of the Year by a local environmental group. This is an annual competition. It's meant to raise awareness of the country's local marine life. The blobfish is a bottom dweller, and it lives deep in the water, usually between 2,000 and 4,000 feet. When brought to the surface, their body deforms into a mushy blob. In their native habitat far below the surface, the pressure's higher. They look more like normal fish. For the record, also my excuse. Back to you guys.
Okay. See, the blobfish is like a swan.
Whoa.
It's making a comeback.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Really
Better under pressure is the moral of the story.
It looks pretty normal there. Okay, that's really interesting. Thanks, Matt.
Coming up, a maternal evolution that is changing the way some folks think about when to start a family.
After the break, why more and more women are waiting until a little later in life to have children, even if the risk of complications gets higher with age. The doctor's in next. We're back with some surprising discoveries when it comes to first-time mothers. We've got a new report, and it shows that more women over 40 are having children these days.
In fact, the fertility rate in women between the ages of 40 to 44 has increased 127% in the last 15 years. And for women 35 to 39, it's gone up 71%. Now, scientists credit major advancements in medical technologies which give women more control over their own fertility.
NBC News medical contributor Dr. Kavita Patel joins us with more on this. Hi, Dr. Patel. Great to have you with us. So, look, a conversation that a lot of us are super familiar with now. It is fertility medicine, is freezing eggs, freezing embryos, and the way that that can help here. This report, it comes from the National Center for Health Statistics. It revealed that the age group that's having the most children, it also increased. So now the age group having the most is women between the ages of 30 and 34. Why do you think it is that so many women are waiting to have children until a little later in their adult lives?
Yeah, Savannah, Joe, this is a trend we've seen, as you mentioned, over years. It's not just a recent trend. Women are prioritizing careers, education, and not to mention significant financial concerns about raising children, including child care and just the cost of living that we've been talking about for all Americans. And then I think to your point, there's been just more education and broader accessibility to kind of fertility treatments and how to think about changing like expectations and social norms for when to have a baby.
Waiting to get pregnant and have children after the age of 35, we know that sharply increases a woman's chance for some sort of complication. Talk about what are some of the risks women should understand.
Yeah, and so definitely talk, because these risks can also vary depending on what your kind of baseline medical condition is. Like when you reach the age of 35, you know, if you have other chronic medical conditions, but even most women who are generally healthy still have, after the age of 35, higher chances of gestational diabetes, higher chances of high blood pressure, hypertension. There's an increased risk of chromosomal abnormalities. And then there's also a greater likelihood of cesarean sections or preterm labor, or just in general kind of complications with the birth itself. So all the kinds of things that I would say get categorized as advanced maternal age. I personally hate that term. I hope we can recoin that term, but all things we should talk to people about after the age of 35.
Yeah, wow. I mean, it's just one of those things where you're like, oh, 35 is not that old. It's something to use those terms. Geriatric pregnancy, another one. Dr. Patel, is there anything older women, even asking that question, maybe not even older, just 35 plus, can do to mitigate those risks?
Yeah, and this is, by the way, great activities to also engage in at any age if you're thinking about having a baby. And this includes just maintaining a healthy weight. We've talked about just the role that weight can play with fertility in general, but it can definitely become harder after a certain age. And then I think also preconception counseling. I can't tell you, Savannah, how many women, including myself, kind of woke up and said, well, it should be easy to get pregnant, right? And so we should just talk about what the chances are, statistics, what your likelihood are, and access. And I would advocate for this, like if any sort of fertility labs or testing is right for you. Doesn't have to be at the age of 35. Just be if you've been trying and haven't been successful after 6 months.
So, Dr. Patel, for those women who are in their late 30s, early 40s, they are interested in being mothers, but they're not quite at that point in their life yet. I mean, just real quick, what's the top advice you'd give them to stay on top of their fertility health?
Yeah, I do think that all the things we just mentioned, but then I really do think having a discussion about options that would be available to you. Everything is available, sometimes at a cost, sometimes insurance can cover it. But I think that it's just having that conversation about preconception counseling. It doesn't matter what stage of life you're in. It's a good conversation to start, usually with your gynecologist, but most primary care physicians can have that conversation.
All right, Dr. Patel, thank you as always. Good to see you.
Coming up, not so primed for privacy.
After the break, what you need to know about Amazon's controversial new update impacting some products that used Alexa. That's next.
Welcome back. Amazon's Alexa voice assistant is changing her privacy settings, and that does have some people concerned. The tech giant announced it's getting rid of a setting on some Echo devices which allowed people to opt out of having their voice commands sent to Amazon's secure cloud, where they can be saved by the company.
That change, it's set to happen on March 28th, but it has some users accusing Amazon of violating their privacy. In response, Amazon told NBC News in a statement, the Alexa experience is designed to protect our customers' privacy and keep their data secure, and that's not changing.
Tech Radar's editor-at-large, Lance Ulanoff, and NBC News Now legal analyst Angela Sanadella join us now to take a closer look at this. Lance, let's start with you. Amazon says this change is only affecting users who have one of these three devices. It's the Echo Dot 4th Gen, the Echo Show 10, and the Echo Show 15. So why are some folks getting so upset about this?
Well, look, a lot of people are concerned about Amazon Alexa listening to them. That's been a long-running concern. And Amazon didn't do any favors, to do itself any favors back in 2019 when there were reports that people were listening to some employees were listening to some of these recordings. But Amazon really has done a decent job with privacy. And the reality is, for most people, they were already sending their voice data to Amazon because there were only a few Echo devices capable of doing the processing locally. Most of the processing had to happen in the cloud. And in fact, when Amazon upgrades to Alexa Plus, which it is working on right now, uses what's called larger models. Those models cannot be processed locally. And that's one of the reasons that this change is being made. So I hate to tell people this, but the fact of the matter is most of us have been sending our voice data to Amazon already.
And Angela, that's probably something that a lot of people don't realize, right? You use these devices, you're not thinking about that. But what are the implications of that? What does somebody need to understand about the voice processing on these devices and what it means for their data?
So I do believe that you need to operate under the assumption that Amazon or whatever company owns this device that is in your home is possibly always listening. And because even though Lance does say, and I do agree with him, that Amazon has really tried to do a good job over the past few years, there have been innumerable lawsuits, not just against Amazon, but against counterparts like, for example, Apple, for listening even when you are not activating that trigger word, for also having independent contractors have access to your data, for unlawfully retaining children's recordings for much longer than they were legally allowed to. The problem is that these privacy safeguards that are in place are still relatively limited. There have not been a lot of changes in privacy law over the past few years. So people are really not aware of the full extent to which these companies do have access to their data. So I would, again, operate under the assumption that just these companies can always potentially be listening to what you're saying in your home if you have a device like this.
Lance, you touched on this, but I'll ask you to reiterate it at this point of why Amazon is making the change, especially if it is a relatively small change, as Amazon says.
Well, so Amazon, they had a big event, less than a month ago, where they introduced Alexa Plus, which is going to be a much more powerful generative AI digital assistant, where you're going to be able to have conversations and really get the things done you want to get done. But large models like that have to run in the cloud. And in fact, every company that has them, from OpenAI with ChatGPT, Google Gemini, and even Apple Intelligence, when it is a bigger model doing a harder task, it is going to run in the cloud.
All right, Lance and Angela, thank you both for joining us. We appreciate it.
We are back with a crime show crossover that's got a lot of fans excited, all right? The casts of Law & Order and Law & Order SVU are joining forces for a highly anticipated event that we now know will air on April 17th on NBC. It's just the start of a night full of justice serving. The episode will be followed by the premiere of the 5th season of Organized Crime on Peacock. The show's leading detective, Elliot Stabler, no stranger to the franchise, bringing this night of fighting crime and taking names all the more suspenseful. There you go.
Exactly. Gotta love a good crossover. NBC has many. All right. Finally this hour, a historic celebration in Nashville is bringing some of the biggest names in country music together.
Yeah, the iconic Grand Ole Opry is marking 100 years tonight with a 3-hour live special that you can catch right here on NBC.
NBC's Kaylee Hardon got a chance to go behind the scenes of the Opry ahead of tonight's big event. Caught up with host Blake Shelton. Kaylee, good morning.
Yeah, this was one of those assignments you're real glad to get if you're a country music fan like me. You guys know the Grand Ole Opry is truly the heart of country music. For more than 5,000 consecutive Saturdays, it has provided a stage for country newcomers and legends alike. Now, those artists are coming together to honor the institution that put country music on the map.
How about a hand for Miss Dolly Parton? Miss Loretta Lynn. Here is the fabulous Johnny Cash.
It's known as the show that made country music famous. But in the 100 years since it first hit the airwaves, the Grand Ole Opry has become a global phenomenon of its own. It's broadcast country's most well-known voices, from Hank Williams to Patsy Cline to modern stars like Blake Shelton, who took me on stage and into the Opry's iconic circle. Is this the most hallowed ground in country music?
I guess so. I mean, I can't imagine what anybody else would say is you're welcome to come stand here.
Oh my gosh.
So I would say this is, I mean, to stand in this circle that's the top of the mountain. It's the pinnacle. This is bigger than a Grammy or any award.
The Opry has played a key role in shaping country music. Dolly Parton made her debut at just 13 years old.
I fell into a burning ring of fire.
It's also where Johnny Cash met his future wife, June Carter, backstage.
So it's their life out there.
For many artists, an Opry membership is one of the highest achievements.
This is a really big deal for me, y'all. You'll never know.
Blake got his invitation in 2010.
Trace came out and asked me if I wanted to be the next member of the Grand Ole Opry, which was, you know, one of the biggest moments of my life, definitely the biggest moment of my musical career.
When he was inducted, he started a tradition.
Now, Blake, I heard you were the first artist to put your own nameplate up on the wall.
That's news to me, but I do remember doing it. I guess maybe I just wanted to be so sure that they didn't forget to put it up there.
Now Blake is helping honor the Opry's own major milestone.
And now as the Opry celebrates 100 years, you're hosting the show. What can we expect from this night?
This night is going to be like no other. This is one of those once-in-a-lifetime things.
Name the names that you're going to have all under one roof.
Looking down here, I saw Garth, I saw Tricia, Reba, Ronnie Millsap. It's almost every living member of the Grand Ole Opry is going to be here at one time. And I can't tell you how special that is, because to get all of us together in one place at one time it's almost impossible.
What goes on backstage when you've got all the biggest names in country music here together?
It's going to be like a family reunion back there. The real show is probably going to be going on backstage, you know.
Outside of the Opry, Blake is keeping busy, recently announcing his first album in nearly 4 years, which includes a song with his wife, Gwen Stefani.
I don't feel like I want to make a record without a duet with Gwen on it anymore. She's my favorite person to sing with.
Your stepsons, I hear,
Yeah.
have the music bug as well.
Yeah.
You've performed with Gwen at the Opry. Could we see a full family performance here sometime?
That would be a lot of fun. I know that would be Gwen's dream come true, is to have like a family band or something like that.
But the album isn't Blake's only big news.
I'm coming to you guys next time I see you.
That's right.
Well, the boys round here.
Blake Shelton is returning to Today Plaza for our city concert series May 13th.
I'm excited. I've had some fun performances at the summer concert series. Every time we walk out there and there's a crowd, they've got their signs, and it's so fun. You guys do that thing right.
It is no doubt going to be a party when Blake comes here. We can't wait. But first up, he is going to step onto that Opry stage tonight for the big celebration. You're going to see performances from Carrie Underwood, Keith Urban, Jelly Roll, Brad Paisley, so many more. Guys, I got to see some of the rehearsal yesterday as we were setting up for our interview with Blake. I mean, he said it. Once in a lifetime.
Oh my God,
show.
so cool.
You got to check it out.
We were talking about TV crossovers. I feel like they'll probably be like music crossovers, you would think, right?
I think there are going to be some surprises.
Yeah, good point. Love country music. That's so exciting. Thanks, Kaylee.
That is going to do it for this hour of Morning News Now.
Stay with us, though. The news continues right now.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app, or follow us on social media.